You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Hey there. Welcome to the Rich Life Revolution. I'm Michelle Cooper, your host, and this is episode number 16, Balancing Your Head, Heart, and Gut with Jennifer Young. I really wanted to bring Jennifer onto the show because not only is she the head of people and culture at one of my businesses, Alchemy Accounting and Bookkeeping, but she's also taught me so much about trusting my gut and leading with my head and heart. I think that she'll be able to share some really great tips for you guys. I feel like I have her in my back pocket, and I want you to get a glimpse of the power of our intuition. You know, sometimes our gut feelings can be a little overwhelming or scary. They can suggest changes that we need to make in our lives or where things aren't sitting in alignment with what we truly believe is possible, but also could be really scary for us sometimes. So, Jennifer isn't just a friend. She isn't just the head of people and culture at Alchemy. She's also the proud author of a new book, Say Yes to Your Yes: How to Trust Your Gut and Take the Leap in Business and Life. Listening to your intuition has huge benefits for our personal lives, but it can also be a game changer for your business. Combining her experience in yoga therapy, where she learned a ton about the anatomical side of intuition, and her entrepreneurial acumen, her book helps lead people towards intuitive personal leadership. So today we're going to talk all about our gut, our intuition, those feelings that spur us on. And I am so excited to share this conversation with you. Let's dive in. Hey, Jen, how are you today?
Hey, Michelle. I'm good. Thanks. I'm super excited to be here.
A little bit of backstory. Jen came into my life as a potential client, to be honest, many years ago. It feels like now, definitely pre-pandemic. And it originally didn't work out, wasn't the right timing. You had some stuff going on. What I thought was so awesome is you came back. You were like, hey, I'm ready now. Right. And it was like, okay, this person's ready to go. And now actually works in my business. Jen, you're my head of people and culture. It wasn't a direct straight line there. It was a zigzaggy line all over the place, but I can't be more grateful to have you in such a pivotal role in the business. So tell us a little bit about you and how we came to know each other.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually our journey of working together was extremely intuitive. So I wanted to learn about Profit First, and I went on the website and filled out the little form to find my Profit First professional. And they ask you kind of about who you are and your profile and everything. And so I was kind of falling into the woo woo, intuitive, spiritual kind of business. And so they matched me with like a spiritual kind of guide or coach. And that's how I found you. And I remember knowing that I needed to work with you, but it was like kind of not the right time at first. It was a little bit clunky. I don't think I was quite ready. And so it was like this. And I think this is kind of what the intuitive journey feels like often, is like this push pull. Like, I know it's this, but is it now or is it later or when is it? And I think, yeah, I can't remember the exact moment, but we started working together at some point. And then I came into your business, advising and working with the team. And then this beautiful opportunity this year where I jumped in all in Alchemy, and it's been such a beautiful journey of growth and tons of unknown again, which is all part of this intuitive journey. It's all unknown, and that's the scary part, but it's also the fun part.
Yeah. And I think you did an amazing thing that people are often scared to do, right? Like you reached out to me earlier this year, beginning of the year, and said, hey, I have some space in my calendar right now. I'm looking for potential client. Here's how I think I can, show up in someone's business. If you know someone, like who do you know that could be a great referral? And I was like, well, what about working for me? And that was, I don't think that was your intention. But I think a lot of people, they wouldn't go with maybe that intuitive nudge, right? To reach out to somebody. They might get caught up in the fear or the, like nervousness or whatever, or like, I'm going to look like an idiot or I'm going to look desperate or whatever it is. I always think it's awesome to tap into the people, like the relationship capital that you have when you are wanting to explore something in your life, right? So was it an intuitive hit for you to say like, "Hey Michelle, like I got some space. I'm looking for some people."
It was. And I think where we get caught up often is trying to figure out all of the next steps. We get this feeling of like, I need to do this thing. I need to reach out to this person. I need to take this action. And then often we get stuck there and we don't do the thing because we're like, oh, but what if? Oh, and like all of this overthinking of everything. When really, we never know what the purpose of the nudge is, of the intuitive nudge. I tell people this all the time. It might be a direct correlation to what the intuitive nudge is, but it might not be at all. Like everything that's happened with us in the last few months, like I could have never imagined that. And I remember when I can't remember, I told somebody, because at the beginning I came in as like sort of project ops manager. We weren't quite sure what I was.
Yeah, it was like I just need someone.
Right. I don't know. One day you were just like, oh, you're head of people and culture. And my title changed. And I told somebody and they were like, oh my God, that title was like created for you. And I was like, I know. Michelle just came up with this title for me and it's like the perfect match. So there's so many little magical things that happened along the way, but yeah, I didn't know what was going to come of all this. And I was terrified also, I have to say, like when we're getting a nudge to do something intuitively, it's to move us out of our comfort zone. And you can feel it in your body. You can feel that it's going to be a stretch.
What does that feel like in your body? Like, is it like uncomfortable? Is it like exciting? What does that feel like when somebody is moving into the unknown?
For me, and I'll give you an example after, it's kind of a hybrid or a mix between this is so exciting and I feel like I'm going to die kind of thing. It's a little bit of both. And it gave me this, when you asked me the question, the first vision that came to mind was when I went skydiving, when I was like right on the edge of the plane on my knees. And it was like, this is going to be the most incredible experience of my life. And I really hope I'm not going to die and my parachute opens. That's kind of the feeling in different variations, like obviously depending on the kind of decision or thing you're making, but it's always that kind of duality feeling that you have.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, when they hear like the word intuition and or intuitive leadership, whatever you want to call it, right? They question what that is for them, or like an intuitive nudge. And so, like for me, I had to understand what my intuition looked like in my experience of it, or like what it feels like in my body. And a lot of times for me personally, it is, I say the thing or the thing happens or I take the action and I'm not even thinking about it. Like it just comes right out of me. Kind of like the, head of people and culture, right? And I guess maybe some people might call that like a divine download or, the different things people label that as, right? And there's been a lot of times, to be fair, where you and I just had this conversation this morning, where I or we as my team in the business have ignored our intuition and done something anyways that one or more of us have felt was not the right thing. Why do we do that, Jen?
Because intuition is not something that is like really tangible, we don't believe it right away, right? So we question our intuition and then we trust our head more than our gut. And it's okay also because what I always tell people is, and I'm gonna be doing like this series coming up called My Intuition Made Me Do It. And I'm gonna be asking stories of success with intuition and stories of failure, because both are really important. If we don't have those sort of, let's failure, whatever you want to call them, moments with our intuition, we don't get to that place where we can remember or define really what an intuitive nudge is, right? When is it really intuition? When are we bypassing it? When is it our head? And so it's really training your gut, your intuition, your second brain that actually lives in your gut to lead the way more often than your head. So when it comes to making decisions or changes or stepping into growth, you need to be leading intuitively first. Because if you lead with your head first, you're just going to stay nice and cozy where it's safe and you're in the know.
Totally, because that's what our brain does, right? It's designed at a certain level just to keep us alive, like just to keep us safe.
Exactly.
So you talk about head, heart, gut, that connection. So tell us about that.
So for me, it's really important to acknowledge all three of those, right? So we're functioning every day with all three. We use mostly our head in the day. We're spending more time there, and I like to separate it by the left brain and the right brain. Okay, so we spend most of our time, and unless we actually do this work in our left brain, which is known information, logic, limited information, because it's only what we know. And then our heart space for me is really that connection with our feelings. And then our gut is really that, like, I don't want to call it instinct because instinct is different than intuition, but it's like that internal compass that is always guiding us towards what is most aligned, what is in highest and best for us. So that doesn't always mean that it's comfortable. I'm going to give you an example because the other day I walked a group through this exercise where I asked them to bring to the session an intuitive nudge that they were getting. Like there's something they were feeling like their gut was nudging them to do or whatever. And then I got them to write down the thing. And then I got them to answer the question, what does your head have to say about this? What does your heart have to say about this? And what does your gut have to say about this? They all have something to say. Your gut is the most wise part of you, right? But your head still has some important things to tell you, and so does your heart. So I gave the example of when I decided to move back to Mexico. I had moved back to Canada, I had just settled it back in, and then I got this intuitive nudge that I had to go back to Mexico. And what was happening for me in that moment, my gut was like, you need to go back to Mexico. There's something that's not complete there. My head was telling me, like, are you insane? Do you know what people are going to think about you? You just settled back in. This is ridiculous. And my heart was in so much pain, was in so much grief for having to leave my family again. And this is where we get stuck. They're all trying to tell you something, and you're like, who do I listen to? So, what I tell people is listen to your gut, but acknowledge what your head and your heart are saying, and bring with you on the journey only what's valid and true and maybe important to know from your head and your heart, right? So what I needed to bring with me then was, okay, I'm driving 6,000 kilometers across Mexico, safety. My head was what was going to help me do this in a safe and organized way. My heart was telling me, you need to grieve before you go, or else you're going to go back there with all of this pain. So there's always information in all of it, but you want your gut to be piloting the journey. And like I would say your gut and your heart together, but sometimes the heart can be overwhelming with emotions and feelings and all that stuff. So the gut is more like just clean, clear information.
Yeah. I think that's really important, right? Like when we think about, making decisions in our lives, I can look back at sometimes the decisions I've made and know that I really made that decision from my heart. I had this conversation this past weekend with a good friend of mine, and she's like, I said, I think I have a challenge around overgiving. And, this isn't new to you, right? Like, that. I think you're the first person to make me aware of that. But she was like, sometimes you're overly generous. Like, not just with money, like with your time, with your energy. You're overly generous. And I would invite you to look at, where does that come from? Is that coming from a place of lack? Like somehow you're not valuing your time, or you're not valuing yourself. So you feel like you need to overly give, right? So I think if I look at decisions I made in the past, some of them have been very heart based decisions that didn't work out so well because they weren't really in alignment. And then I look at decisions that, maybe I've made that are very head space decisions that are based, me, I love data, right? Like, give me more data, Jen. I know.
I had
I
no
need
idea what
more
you're talking
data.
about.
And so I had to balance that, right? And not make a decision only for data. To me, data is a reference point. It's one piece of the puzzle of where we're trying to get to, right? And I had to learn that because a lot of years I spent engrossed in data. That was my part of my job. I think it's interesting, like, how you say, like, the gut is the pilot, but we also have to look at what the heart is saying, what the head is saying, like what's being presented there. I don't think I've ever thought about it in that way.
Yeah, because, a lot of people talk about intuition and the importance of it, and it's super important. And, when I talk about intuitive leadership, I'm talking about personal leadership. And that then turns into business leadership or social leadership or whatever you want.
It's the foundation.
Yeah, so like for me, the intuition moves through the right side of the brain, which is creativity, intuition, and imagination, all that stuff, and the left brain is logic and all that. If we were only functioning from the left or the right brain, we would be doing nothing constructive during the day. Our left brain allows us to organize and categorize and move things forward in a timely manner. And like in this human experience, we live with time, right? So it allows us to do that. I don't know if you ever saw the TED Talk with Jill Bolte Taylor when she has her stroke, the stroke of insight, when her left brain shuts down. You have to watch that. She's hilarious, first of all. And she talks about her whole experience of when she was only left with her right brain and like the whole experience of trying to like pick up the phone and dial the numbers. And like she couldn't even, there was no more form to her life. It was just these feelings and sensations. And anyways, the way she explains it, it's hilarious. And so we need all of them. But my God, do we ever live in a limited experience through our left brains too often? It's incredible. Because like you said, fear of making a mistake, of not getting it right.
Yeah, not getting it right, and what'll happen if, and what will somebody think, and all the what ifs, right? So you mentioned a little bit about intuitive leadership, right? I really came to understand just before the pandemic the whole concept around conscious leadership and self leadership, that everything starts with self leadership. I think I knew this, but I didn't know it. Like, I didn't understand how this concept worked. So it's always something in the back of my mind that, like, we can't lead anybody unless we can lead ourselves. And it doesn't matter whether you own a business, or you coach a kids team, or you have a family. It all starts with self leadership. Absolutely everything. And so you have a school of intuitive leadership. What's that about? Like, tell us about that. Why do I need to go to school?
So essentially, the School of Intuitive Leadership is the school that I would have needed my whole entire life. It's the school of like limitless possibilities. And it's the place where we get to nurture, explore, and play with our intuition. It's a place where we get to unpack that intuitive nudge together as a community, understand it better, and then take action together. Like that's the part. It's like moving people through the process of saying yes to their yes, which is, we'll get to in a second. I know the title of the book, but it's where we get to do that process together as a community, and where I support people in doing it, where I share my stories also of my own journey, because I've been exploring this not knowing since I'm a teenager, really, probably even younger. So it's a place where we really get to nurture our personal leadership from the intuitive channel and learn how to master juggling that like head, heart, and gut thing. And it's a place where we get to mess up together and learn the lessons together about like, okay, what did I not listen to? Why did I not listen to? And so inevitably in this journey, whether I'm working with like someone who's an entrepreneur or someone who's just going through something personal, healing happens because trauma and past experiences and conditioning is often what gets in the way of us being able to listen to and trust our gut. So it's this beautiful journey of personal growth, personal leadership, and getting to know what is in highest and best for us because that's where our gut is leading us all the time. And why are we not allowing ourselves to say yes to that thing that is in highest and best for us?
Yeah, like I think that's really interesting. There's a part of me that thinks, like I have a friend who's like, I've just decided that I'm living my whole life through my intuition. Like if it doesn't feel like a hell yeah, I am not doing it. And I'm like, that freaks me the fuck out, to be honest. There's a lot of things that aren't a hell yeah, but I still, maybe have to do them. I don't know. Maybe I don't. But like, I don't know. It just, there's something about it for me that feels, and I feel like I live in a lot of my intuition. But when I think about making business decisions based off of my intuition, I'm like, what if I'm wrong? And then I'm like, well, Michelle, there's no mistakes. Everything is an opportunity. But I guess maybe there's a piece there around like, what if it hurts someone? What if what's right for me, and maybe this is part of my overgiving thing, but what if what's right for me and feels like an intuitive yes for me or a no actually ends up hurting someone that I care about? How do you work with people to navigate that?
Okay, I'm really happy you brought this up. This is something that a lot of people experience. And I'm like full spinal chills right now as you bring up this topic. One thing that I've learned on this journey is that usually what's in highest and best for us is also in highest and best for everyone involved, even if it hurts a little bit, even if it's hard a little bit, right? So if we use a really typical example of a relationship that ends, one person just knows intuitively that it's not meant to continue, that this is not what's in highest and best for them, and they end the relationship. And it's really painful for the other person. But 2, 3 years down the line, you see where those two people are at, and you're like, oh my God, this was the best thing for everybody. So we can't really avoid people experiencing pain or disappointment or sadness. Like it's part of the journey. And has been a huge lesson for me because I'm a peacekeeper. Like that's what I do. I like, what can I do to keep the peace everywhere? Which means that I often ignore what isn't highest and best for me to not cause pain to people around me. But then I see how that actually disempowers and is not supportive of what the other person needs as well.
Well, and you said, I am a peacekeeper. I would offer that that's the conditioning that you've had. So I would say you are not a peacekeeper. Like I feel like we have to be so careful about our I am statements and really question, is this actually the authentic me, the spiritual me, that connection to God, source, universe, whatever it is to anybody? Or is this the conditioning I've been living under? It's kind of like I am an alcoholic. Well, that's the conditioning. And yeah, like I can see how that can get in the way of like our, I guess our intuition is kind of like, that divine connection, right? It's that clear channel.
Yes, like when we are plugged in, like plugged into source, and we're getting the direct feedback of what needs to happen next. But it's like we're living our lives and we're like unplugging that thing because we're like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to do this thing, right?
Because it can feel scary. Because I think sometimes our intuition is telling us that how we're showing up in the world isn't for our best and highest good. it's not our most authentic self. Maybe we're coming from an ego place or a fear or something besides our most clearest channel from the universe. And we might be questioning our business. Like, should we have this business? Should we have this job? Should we be in this relationship? Should this person be our friend? And I think that to me is where it gets scary, because it's like, oh, again, it's just external, right? Like, it's like, well, I have a friend who kind of basically shut down her business because her intuition told her, this is not your path. And I'm like, I hope I don't get that message from my intuition because I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I got 20 people working for me. Like, hey guys, my intuition said shut down alchemy. And all my people are like, what?
Yeah. And if ever that is what happens, it's because there's groups of people that experience things together in a lifetime. I know this is going to sound awful, but like, some people experience natural disasters together. Some people experience family trauma together. And sometimes we're just meant to go through things as a group. But when we overthink things so much about like, what if, oh my God, what if this happens to me? We then go into analysis paralysis. And what I tell people all the time, because people often ask me, like, okay, once I hear the thing, like, what is the process after? Because it feels scary as fuck. And so the process is listen to the nudge, and everybody experiences intuition differently, but you'll feel it in your body most of the time, differently for everybody. And then ask yourself, what is the one next thing that I can do in the direction of this nudge to go explore and see? That's all you need to do. And that's the only thing that you actually can do, because all the other steps ahead don't exist yet, right? So, and that's the whole journey. It's like intuitive nudge. Okay, feels like I need to do this thing. So let's go back to the relationship example. My intuition, let's say, says like, you need to end this relationship. Immediately people think about the whole thing, the separation, and then the house, and then the kids, and then it's like this, and then you experience this emotional turmoil, and then it becomes like you experience so much suffering. Whereas if you're just like, I have this intuitive nudge that I need to end this relationship, why don't I just book a session with my therapist and unpack that a little bit? And then after that, if it feels even more clear, then what is the next thing? And so it's always just about that next step forward.
That's awesome. That's like a little gold nugget there. Like, it's just the next step, because me, like, you know me very well, but like, I'm like, okay, so now we got to do the whole thing. Like, okay, pivot, pivot, pivot. We're in like a Friends episode. We're trying to get the couch up the stairs, right? Like, it's like we're doing all the things before, like, just because I've had this, my gut's telling me, my intuition is saying, hey, this is, and now I'm like, I'm 5 steps along. And I will tell you, I have come to know, not tell you, Jen, tell our listener, I have come to know that that is very stressful for the people around you, okay? Whether that's your family or your employees, they're like, honestly, one of my dear, very loyal employees, Carmen, describes it as, I'm running behind Michelle, trying to pick up all the stuff she is throwing behind as she sprints through life. And I'm like, seriously, we have to really slow things down, right?
Well, I just like that visual is so hilarious. And like you and I are really high quick starts, right? You're like an 8 or a 9, and you're a 9 and I'm a 7. So when we get an idea, it's already half done by the time we get through our thought process, right?
By the time I've talked to you about it's all like, I've moved on to the next thing.
Right.
It's like, oh, here you go. You run with that now. I've moved on to something else, right?
Yeah. And that's where the head can be useful. Like the head in certain situations will slow us down a little bit and help us just move forward in a more balanced way. So if you think about, I'm going to give you like a super basic example because I'm at my grandma's house now and she's the one who taught me how to cross the street. So let's say your gut is telling you like, you need to go work from a coffee shop today. Like it's just not happening at home. So you go out of the house and you start walking towards a coffee shop and you're like, oh, I'm craving, like your heart just wants something like nice and warm and cozy because you're emotionally, I don't know what today. So you go somewhere that has like the best soup or the best chocolate cake or whatever, you know? So you're like, oh, I'm going to go to that coffee shop because it's going to give me the food that my heart needs today. And you got to cross the street. Your head is going to get you to look both ways before you cross the street and go do the thing that your gut and your heart is telling you you need to do that day. Right? So if we don't use our head, sometimes we forget to look both ways before crossing the street. And then we can get hit by a bus or like whatever the bus is in your life in that moment.
That's very powerful. I feel like I've been hit by quite a few buses.
Right?
Like a, what do you call it? Like a train of buses, like buses that are all tied together.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's part of the process. Like I always tell people, the intuitive journey is a messy one. If you're expecting like a Marie Kondo kind of experience as you follow this intuitive journey, like that's not going to happen. Things are not going to be all nice and tidy and folded on your way there. Sometimes they might be, but it's going to be more of like those shows when they go in and like clean up a house that's been hoarded for like it's like this, it's messy, it's not, and it's not linear. 100% not linear.
Right. Because really, like if you think about the universe, how life has come to be, that is not a linear process, right? It's like the Big Bang Theory. It's just a big freaking explosion of matter, right? And they'll feel in control if things are moving along step by step. And it's like this, I don't know, like in business, people think it's like they describe it as a hockey stick kind of grid, right? And business rarely looks like a freaking hockey stick, okay?
No.
And neither does our life. That's so good. So you have a book coming out, right?
Yes, that's a funny story because you know the quote that says man plans and God laughs.
Right. Yeah.
So I keep giving this book a timeline. I'm like, it's coming out in June, and then it's coming out in August, and now it's October, and it seems like it has a timeline of its own.
It probably does. I believe that it does. Like I always say, my business has its own energy, and I'm along for the ride.
It's called Say Yes to Your Yes: How to Trust Your Gut and Take the Leap in Business and Life. And it is, I would say, a book that brings together my background in yoga therapy, because I am a former yoga therapist. So, all things physiology, the brain, and the nervous system, with my experience in entrepreneurship. And it essentially leads the path forward for like intuitive personal leadership and like what is it, how does it work, what's happening in our body when intuition comes through, what's happening in our body when we get stuck and we can't take action, and what is the ideal internal environment that we need so that we can have that clear calm space to say yes to our next intuitive yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good conversation. So thank you so much for sharing this. It is definitely your gold in the world. And as I said at the beginning, like I've learned so much from you and with you, alongside you. And, I want to encourage listeners to explore this for themselves, right? Like you said you do in your school, like what feels like an intuitive, like a gut thing, right, for me right now, right? What does my heart say? What does my head say? And like was my kind of area of growth around abundance, was it doesn't have to be an either or. Like we can have an and. So sure, maybe we're getting a gut intuitive nudge to, let's just say, I don't know, start a business. We have a job. Well, it doesn't mean you have to like cut and run. Like you don't have to like quit your job tomorrow and build a business. You can explore a side gig for a while. My business has looked so many different ways over the years, and I've learned that it's an and, it's not an or.
Yeah. And I think if I can drop one last thing for listeners that for me is the one of the most important pieces that I teach all the time is your intuition will never give up on you. So you don't have to worry about like losing this insight that you got or losing this nudge that you got. And I'm again like getting these full spinal chills. Your intuition is the wisdom that is by your side your whole life. It will never give up on you. Even if you don't do the thing right away, it'll come back, nudge you again. And if it's really important for the alignment of your life, the nudges will get stronger and louder. But that FOMO fear, the fear of missing out on this guidance that your intuition gave you can drop that. It's not, it'll come back as many times as it needs until you're ready to do the thing.
Yeah, that's so good. I had that actually this weekend. It's so funny you said this. As you know, I was away with a friend this weekend, and it was really just a really good down time, like down, low energy, like just rest, restore, relaxation time, but in good company and stuff. And we started talking about, like, I had this idea around a property that I'm inheriting and what's possible on there. And I always thought it was around building family legacy and a great home for elderly dogs. But actually, the idea came that it's actually a healing space for people, and dogs are part of that. I think senior dogs have so much wisdom. And I'm like, it's a healing space for people. The initial thing was like people recovering from cancer, but it's like, no, it's not just cancer. It's like maybe you've had a nervous breakdown, or maybe you're in grief, or like it's just a healing space. And that feels very important to me. And I can't quite put my finger on it, kind of thing. It's not totally like crystallized in my mind. And then I started worrying, like, I got to write this down. I'll forget about it. And so when you said, like, it's not going to go away, like, if it's true to you, it'll come back, right? Like, I haven't forgot about the home for senior dogs kind of thing, but it's shifted. I've got a little bit more clarity on that, right? And so, yeah, like, I didn't write it down because I don't know, I just got talking about something else or whatever. But now I'm kind of like, oh, it's not going to go away, right? Like if it came through that strongly, there's something there.
And when you want to grip the idea and like tattoo it somewhere so that it's never forgotten, you contract the space for evolution in the idea. Because that first insight is just the first like little like, hey, Michelle, here's this idea. And then it needs time to evolve. You know, there's going to be more information that's going to come through. So I love writing and journaling, obviously, but sometimes I think there's wisdom in also not writing it down and letting the next version of it come through when it's ready.
Yeah. And then, you know, the on top of that is I'm a non-specific manifester in human design, right? So if I try to get super specific and descriptive about what I'm creating, or manifesting, it goes sideways.
Yeah, it's like you suffocate it.
Thank you so much for this. Today is like really, really, really great episode. I think super awesome information and nuggets here. And anything to share? One more little thing before you go?
No, I mean, I think I just want people to know, like, don't be scared of your journey. Like it's all perfectly mapped out for you. And yeah, just remember that man plans and God laughs. You don't have to control things so much. Just like relax into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, okay, go ahead. Think you have control over that, Michelle.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
awesome. Thank you so much. I really adore this conversation. So appreciate you. I'm grateful.
I'm grateful for you too. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Intuition is something that is just so intriguing to me. And I love how Jennifer talked about taking stock writing down whatever it is that our gut is nudging us to do, reading it, and really embodying that, bringing that energy into our bodies. Sometimes we think that intuition is just purely gut driven, but I think it's important, and Jen mentioned this, that our head is just part of the process, right? When we bring all of these things in together, the head, the heart, the gut, we can really make significant changes in our lives. And we can make them effortlessly. Sometimes we have to get our thinking out of the way, though. So I would love to hear if something that you heard today has inspired you to make decisions in a different way, to make some changes in your life, and how you could bring intuitive leadership into your business. I can't wait to hear from you. Be sure to tag us on any social media, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I respond to all of those messages. And be sure to tune in next week for episode 17, where I'm talking about conscious versus unconscious manifesting. This is a really important thing to grasp, and I can't wait to share this information with you. Have a great week. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.